and then I'm going to turn this meeting over to Bonnie Hagan, who will run it for us. First, a little bit, one thing about me is that I need to leave early today to head downtown to a doctor's appointment. So I will disappear at some point. Bonnie's running the meeting. Pam is here. Who needs me? The other is that this meeting is going to be recorded and posted on the council website, on Bonnie's website, maybe on the other two speakers' website. Does anybody object to that? Okay, because it's full of a lot of information, and there were a number of people who couldn't come, so they wanted to know if they could see it online. Okay, other announcements, the March meeting, I'm going to put this in an email to you, but it's exciting, so I wanted to announce it. The March meeting has been changed from the 9th to March 2nd. We've got Rabbi Ellen Bernstein, who has written a new Haggadah called The Promise of the Land. And so she will be speaking to us from Boston at 6 p.m. on March 2nd. And I'll send information about getting her Haggadah if you're interested in that. She wanted to make it as early as possible, as far away from Pesach as possible, so that people would have time to make use of the information. And then on April 6th, our meeting is at 6 p.m. again, and we have, thanks to Ellen Weininger, Melissa Jean Rotini, who is the Director of Environmental Management Operations for Westchester County Department of Environmental Facilities. She's going to be talking about recycling and composting in Westchester. So we got the person to come talk to us about that issue in Westchester. So that's great. Okay, with that, just a moment of introduction of Bonnie. For those who don't know her, Bonnie is a member of the Westchester Jewish Council Board. She's also the COO of Bright Energy Services, which is an energy engineering firm that helps building owners and managers implement energy efficiency projects that make fiscal sense, which I think is going to be a big topic today. Whether the project involves the installation of LED lighting, HVAC, pipe insulation, steam trap, solar, she gave me this list of blah, 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 building controls or other energy efficiency measures. The projects are developed and installed so that they will result in significant greenhouse gas and operating expense reductions, yay, attractive returns on investment, and the most positive impacts on human health. Sounds perfect. Glad you can do that. Sounds pretty easy. With that, I'll turn the meeting over to Bonnie. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Marty. And thank you, Pam. And thank you, Westchester Jewish Council, for organizing this much needed, timely event. And thank you to all of you who are here today to learn about energy efficiency strategies, especially in this time of climate change, COVID-19, and the economic crisis. We have like a double and a triple whammy here. So first, a little housekeeping. We have 3 speakers, including myself, as Marty mentioned, and I'll introduce them to you shortly. And we have a lot to share with you. So I ask that if you have any questions, you please put them inside the chat, and then we'll answer them at the end, time permitting. And we expect to have time permitting at the end. We'll also leave our contact information in the chat. So if we run out of time, you can feel free to contact us after this Zoom meeting. Actually, you know what? I'm going to share my screen just for, let me just get my presentation here for a second. Bear with me. Screen share. There we go. Can everybody see this? You can see this? Okay, great. All right. So, so Marty told you a little bit about me in her introduction. I want to also mention that I live in White Plains with my husband and my 2 high school age children. I'm also on the board of the UJA Federation Business and Professional Division here in Westchester. And I'm a trustee of my synagogue congregation, Kol Ami, in White Plains. So as Marty mentioned, my day job is being the Chief Operating Officer at Bright Energy Services, an energy efficiency firm. And like I live and breathe my Judaism, I live and breathe energy efficiency. I feel really fortunate when my 2 worlds collide, and I'm able to help synagogues and other Jewish organizations also become energy efficient. The result of my work is that I help these buildings cut their energy costs, secure available incentives from Con Ed, the utilities, NYSERDA, other granting agencies. I help them meet regulatory requirements because we have things now like energy codes, and I help them deploy the latest, most efficient technologies and reduce their carbon footprints. I literally think I have the best job in the world. I love saving money and I love saving the earth. So if you own or operate a building of any kind in Westchester County, and I know many of you are responsible for managing buildings that house all the activities of your respective congregations, I want to share with you how you can reduce energy consumption in those buildings too. And not only your houses of worship and learning institutions, but your businesses, your homes, whatever. Saving energy is saving energy. So let's start by looking at energy efficiency through a Jewish lens. The Torah teaches us that we are partners with God in creating and sustaining our world, so it is our moral obligation to engage in sustainable business and personal practices. Climate change due to industrialism threatens to alter the earth in a terrible way, and unfortunately, we're starting to see the results of this, like in more frequent extreme weather events and other devastating things like the forest fires in California and sea level rise and a whole bunch of other terrible things. And protecting human health and the diversity of life is a value that's emphasized in Torah, Talmud, and rabbinic literature throughout the ages, beginning with the commandment in Genesis for Adam and Eve to protect the Garden of Eden. So in short, protecting the environment is a mitzvah. Rising energy bills, and we all complain about how much they cost, and the environmental imperative to reduce carbon emissions require us to reinvent how we produce, deliver, and consume energy. We need to recognize that energy is a fundamental ingredient in human life. There is no industrial, agricultural, or health or domestic or any other sort of process that doesn't require a degree of external energy. So with energy being so integrated into our lives and everything that we do, it requires our attention. We need to measure it, we need to manage it, we need to understand it, we need to conserve it, and we need to use energy wisely, especially now since we're not just dealing with an energy crisis, but a full-blown climate crisis and the worst public health crisis in over a century with a corresponding economic crisis. So I've invited two colleagues of mine to share information with you as well. Mark Corral, could you wave, Mark, so everyone knows who you are? Mark Corral of Climate Change and Environmental Services is a professional engineer and will talk to you about why it's important to reduce energy usage and waste. He'll explain the first steps in identifying your building's energy profile to determine what is efficient and what might be wasteful. He'll tie the information into the economics of saving energy, particularly in this current economic crisis. He'll share with you a case study on work he did with his synagogue, Westchester Jewish Center, so you can see these practices in action. Then Bud Hammer, Bud, could you please wave? Bud, the president and general manager of Atlantic Westchester, which focuses on heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. We call that HVAC for short, sometimes HVAC, because it's a mouthful to say heating, ventilation, and air conditioning every time. He focuses on the commercial and industrial sector, and he'll talk about indoor air quality during the time of COVID and how proactively maintaining, remediating, and installing certain HVAC technology is critical, not just for the smooth operation of your building and the health of your finances, but to the health of the occupants of the buildings and in stopping the indoor transmission of COVID. He'll explain the process to safely return to your buildings after you can fully open them up again. Then I'll speak briefly about LED lighting and how the economics of energy efficiency and the energy efficiency of projects overall. There are a ton of financial incentives available, and I know you're interested in hearing about the money. And there's quite a lot available to help pay for these projects from the utilities, from local municipalities. And there's also money out there for COVID mitigation projects as well. So then we'll start taking questions from the chat. So please feel free to enter your questions there. Energy efficiency is a very large topic, and there there's no way that we will be able to talk about everything today, but there will be another roundtable on other energy efficiency measures later in the year. So you'll hear announcements about that, but for now, let's begin. And now I turn this over to Mark Corral.
Great, thank you. I guess we'll move the slide up. Good morning, everybody. Boker Tov. Hope everybody's doing well today, this cold day. So because it's cold, I guess it's good to talk about energy. And I'm going to talk a little bit about growing energy issues for synagogues. So Bonnie, next slide, please. There you go. So synagogues should be concerned about energy. Why? Because of the cost. For many reasons, and we'll talk about some later on. And by the way, you know, I want to mirror what, before I get into this, I want to mirror what Bonnie said. I'm just amazed the number of people I speak to who look at this issue of energy and the environment as a binary choice. Gee, if I'm good for the environment, it's going to cost me a lot of money. Or gee, I've got to save money, so the heck with the environment. That's not the way it really works. You can be good for the environment and save money. I'm going to show a number of examples of that here. We could be good in terms of energy efficiency, good for sustainability, good to reduce greenhouse gases and save money. So we're very concerned with a high cost of energy. As you see here in this slide, the average cost of a building that is classified as an SC1, which is the religious rate for Con Edison, you see the difference. Here in Westchester, we pay a lot more per kilowatt hour of electricity than we do nationwide. And by the way, if you get nothing else, I'm going to give you 2 quick tips through my little talk. And if you get nothing else out of it, take these 2 very seriously. The first one here, take some time today, check a Con Ed bill, a recent Con Ed bill you got at your synagogue. Make sure you're classified as either an SC1 or an EL1. If you're classified as something else, you may well be misclassified and you're paying too much. And in my case study, I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So anyway, the rates in Westchester, not only as you see, are higher than the national average, it's actually going to go up. There's almost no doubt it's going to go up in the coming couple of years, mostly because of Indian Point. Indian Point's going to shut down totally in April of 2021. Electricity's out there, but now there's going to be less supply, which means it's going to be more expensive. So the bottom line is to control your costs so that your energy costs don't go haywire, reduce the amount of energy you're using, or more important, reduce the amount of energy you're wasting. And this is, by the way, both electricity and fuel usage, oil or gas. Bonnie, next slide, please. So why should you reduce your energy usage? I've got 3 reasons here. There's many more than 3, but I'm going to give you 3 in the limited time. The first one is money, right? We're talking about money here. Actions that reduce your electricity usage, your fuel usage, will reduce your costs, right? And there's really no risk involved. Show of hands, how many people enjoy paying their Con Ed bill? I hope nobody raised their hand. But there's a special financial value in doing an energy upgrade. Bonnie's going to talk later about LED lighting. If you were to upgrade your lights to LEDs and to save energy, that's a one-time investment, a one-time upgrade, but that savings is going to last years and years and years. You're going to get savings immediately. You're using less wattage, and those lights are going to be in those sockets for years and years to come. So you're going to be saving money every year based on a single action, a single upgrade. And in fact, the cost savings actually rise in the future without having to do anything, because rates, of course, are only going up. Con Edison rates don't go down, they only go up. So if you're saving $10,000 in a year because of your upgrade of lighting, the next year it's going to be about $10,300. Energy costs are going up about 3% a year, and the year after $10,600, again without having to do anything more. That's a little bit different from the other way to raise money, and that's revenue, because you have yearly memberships. So you get dues, and then the next year you got to get the dues again, and the next year dues again, and all that. Reason number 2, your congregants want you to save on energy for both fiscal and for green reasons. So being able to brand your synagogue as fiscally efficient, or green, and actually showing that you're reducing energy usage, showing you're reducing greenhouse gas emissions, is sure to raise pride, interest, and all that entails. And what I mean all that entails, part of that is donations. And yeah, spiritual, as Bonnie said very well, and I have here a quote from Psalm. So, you know, this is certainly a very important part of this as well. Next slide, please. So sometimes a lot of people are overwhelmed, they're intimidated by energy. Say, oh, I can't reduce energy waste. What can I do here? Yes, you can reduce energy waste. I could just about, I really can guarantee it. But you have to do it step by step, little by little. So stick to the program. First thing you need to do is determine your baseline. How much energy, electricity, gas usage, oil usage are you using now? So gather a year or two's worth of recent kind of bills. I would go before COVID, because obviously COVID changed a lot of things. I would look at 2018, 2019 kind of bills and chart out your usage and chart out your costs on a month by month basis, because things certainly do change. Your annual usage becomes your baseline. Think about your shul, think about your operations. Is your building utilized a lot or not? Is there a nursery school, an after school program, or there evening programs, Sunday programs, things like that? And then understand and chart out your building infrastructure. And I know it's boring. Nobody wants to list your HVAC units. Again, as Bonnie said, those HVAC units, the boilers, your air conditioners, but make a list of them. Understand other things that use energy, the refrigerators, freezers in your kitchen or kitchens, your IT center, your data servers, elevators, things like that. Make a list. Doesn't have to be detailed, but make a good list like that. Next slide, please. Now have an energy audit done. And I liken this to a checkup with the doctor. Hopefully everybody here goes to the doctor once a year for a checkup. That physician checks your blood pressure, your pulse, your EKG, takes a urine sample, blood sample, whatever, and may come back and hopefully will come back and say, hey, everything's fine, see you next year. Or maybe they'll say, oh, your blood pressure is a little high. Why don't you, cut back on the coffee, cut back on the salt or something like that. Or maybe give you a medication because your cholesterol is high or something like that. Or maybe they'll see something in the EKG and refer you to a specialist, a cardiologist. This is something similar. Have an idea of what your energy profile is like. What is your equipment like? Is your equipment old? Is it working well? Is it making noise? Things like that. What are the operating schedules? Is your equipment operating properly as far as the people using the rooms are concerned? Is everyone comfortable? Are there controls that turn off the equipment when not needed and all that? So this kind of a review of your systems that use energy won't give you exact answers of what's wrong and what can be improved, but at least can indicate where there may be a problem. So this is really very much like a checkup, like a medical checkup. Next slide, please. So what areas can stand improvement? Here are 4 right here. And Bonnie's going to talk about the lighting, and Bud's going to talk about the HVAC, the heating, ventilation, air conditioning. These are areas that are common links to energy usage and energy waste that can be improved, and we can reduce that energy waste. The next slide, please. So don't give in. This is not a losing battle. I've come across so many people who just are intimidated by this. It really will work out. So just hang in there. Once you begin to identify what equipment might be inefficient or old or needs to be replaced, or some problems with insulation, cold spots in the winter, whatever, now bring in the specialist to address the issues: lighting, insulation, HVAC, et cetera, et cetera. The amazing thing is there's been great gains in technology in the past decade, even less than a decade. Equipment now performs just as well and uses less energy to do so. Just as well and uses less energy. And in fact, if anything, they often involve less O&M, operations and maintenance. That means it's going to save your staff from changing the light bulb so often or changing the filters as often and all that kind of stuff. Now, here's my second little quick tip, and that is that everybody should do. If you get, again, nothing else out of this, think about this. There's a government program called Energy Star. It's co-hosted, co-sponsored by the EPA and the Department of Energy. And what they do is they look at plug load, the things you plug into a socket: personal computers, printers, TVs, refrigerators, freezers. And it lists and gives labels to exact makes and models that are much more energy efficient than average, generally 20 to 30%. So if you make a policy to, when you buy replacement refrigerators, replacement computers, et cetera, that have the Energy Star label, excuse me, you're guaranteed to save 20 to 30%. And you don't have to do anything. All you're doing is bringing in the equipment, and the equipment is doing the work, save you money. And of course, save your energy, and of course, save you money and save greenhouse gases as well. So that's something to think about. Research what this Energy Star is. It's in the internet for sure. Look up the lists and try to bring in more and more Energy Star labeled equipment. Right there, you'll be saving energy and money. Next slide, please. Okay. And what's beautiful about energy reductions is you're not the only one that's going to benefit from it. You're not the only ones who want to have this done. How would you like somebody else to pay some of the costs of these projects? Now, the reality is, of course, if you're upgrading lights and getting new air conditioners and et cetera, you do have to pay for it. But there are entities who want you to do this and will actually pay part of that cost for you. We'll give you incentives, we'll give you rebates, we'll give other things. The state of New York and Con Edison will pay you to reduce energy use. It's in their interest to do so. So they'll actually pay part of the costs of the upgrades. And I have here websites, web pages of them that give a background about some of their programs, their incentive programs. Again, working with them, they'll actually pay anywhere from 1/3 to even 2/3 or 70% of the cost of that upfront cost for some of these projects. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to talk briefly about a case study. I call this the other WJC, not the Westchester Jewish Council, but the Westchester Jewish Center of Mamaroneck, New York. It's a 500 family conservative shul with a nursery, a Hebrew school, and has many religious, cultural, and educational programs. In the pre-COVID days, and I'm sure will be in the post-COVID days too, the building is used pretty much 7 days a week. There's something going on pretty much 7 days a week. They had not done a review of their energy costs in a long, long time, very long time, literally decades. They get their Con Ed bill, they pass it on to the bookkeeper who pays the bill. No one really paid attention to what their usage is, what their trends are, things like that. And there was also concern that some of the old technologies, some of the old HVAC units, other things were still being used there, and energy costs were becoming unacceptably high. So it was time to really study this and do something about it. So we did that. Next slide, please. So it was little by little. We didn't want to overturn everything at once. We wanted everyone to be comfortable with these changes. So it was lots, little by little, we made changes here. First thing we did was we reviewed their Con Ed bills. We looked at their historic Con Ed bills, and then it hit us. They were misclassified for electricity. They're actually classified properly for gas, but they were misclassified for electricity. Remember in the very beginning, I talked about SC1. They were an SC9, which is a large industrial facility. This synagogue was classified as a large industrial facility, meaning the rates they were paying were much higher than they should have been paid. The error was corrected. We worked with Con Ed, and in fact, by law, Con Ed had to go back, had to do a 6-year look back, pay them the excess for the past 6 years with interest. They ended up getting, I'll say this, I know we're being taped, I'll say it anyway, they ended up getting a check from Con Edison for $78,000. Isn't that pretty good? And all because they looked at it. And this misclassification had gone on for decades, probably. But like I said, it was caught, it was corrected. They're getting the benefit now, and they got, of course, that nice little refund. The Westchester Jewish Center had never selected an ESCO that supply electricity. They relied on Con Edison to pick their supplier for them. As you probably know, you as a consumer, whether it's at home or at your synagogue, can choose your supplier of electricity and of gas. And they didn't for years. They by not choosing anybody, that means Con Ed chooses it. They're not going to choose the cheapest one, I can guarantee you that. So we brought in a broker and negotiated hard with a supplier. So they signed up with a supplier, and right now, Westchester Jewish Center has a locked-in supply electric rate that's below the area norm. Now we, in our area, where Westchester Jewish Center is, and in the Mamaroneck area, there's an aggregated supply program where together, all the homeowners together can get a good supply price. Westchester Jewish Center's price is better than that one, even though it's negotiated among thousands of homes. And it's locked in for 3 years. And I'm pretty sure that supply rate's going to go up in the market, is going to go up markedly in the next couple of years after Indian Point closes down later this year. But they're locked in at a very low rate. So it was a really good deal. I think we'll be saving money in the future. They went through a major upgrading of their lighting a bunch of years ago. Their fluorescent lights were replaced with LEDs, cut their lighting electric use by 50%, and of course their costs by 50% as well. And they upgraded various HVAC equipment as they needed to be replaced. Instead of getting the cheapest units out there, they got the most modern energy efficient units out there. So next slide, please. I think this is my last slide, if I remember right. So here's the bottom line. This is what their savings are. Fiscal year one here, which is fiscal year 2014, the year that ends June 30th, 2014, their actual energy bills was, well, you do the math, $10,000 a month was their average monthly bill, was $10,000 a month. They were paying Con Edison for electricity and gas. The orange line represents the same theoretical, same energy usage with 3% inflation, which is about the average rate for Con Edison. I think actually Con Edison is slightly higher. I think it's 3 1/3 or something, but this was based on 3% interest or rise in rates. So they would be paying much more, over 140,000 now, but the blue represents their actual energy costs as the years went on, as these projects were implemented. And you see that it's actually gone down as the years have gone down, despite the fact prices have gone up. Because of these 4 items and even other things they've done as well, as you see, a couple of them are administrative in terms of getting properly classified and using ESCO, and some of them, of course, technological. And you see that it's going down. Now, year 7 on the far right here is this fiscal year that ended June 30, 2020. That's obviously impacted by COVID and the fact the building was used less. So that's why there's a little bit of a tail going downward. But obviously, refrigerators, freezers are going to be on COVID and not COVID. There's going to be a lot of electric usage anyway. But look at the difference between the orange, the theoretical, and the actual. So let's say looking back at 2019, they saved over $40,000. If they had done nothing and just left everything as it is, didn't reclassify, left the lights as they were, they would have been paid over $40,000 more that year than they actually did. So this is a great savings. These actions that were mostly done in the first couple of years saves them money now and will be saving money. And again, a significant amount, over $40,000 a year. So this is something that really works from an energy point of view, from a cost point of view, from a fiscal point of view. So with that, I'll turn it over to Bud, correct?
Yes,
and thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mark. Could you please put your email address in the chat if people want to contact you? Thank you. And Bud Hammer, we'll turn this over to you. Thank you, Bud.
Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you, Mark. So 2 levels from the HVAC world that I'm just going to briefly speak upon. I imagine everybody on this call drives an automobile, and I use automobiles as an analogy for HVAC systems quite often because people understand their automobiles. If you don't have a dashboard that works, you can't see how fast you're going, you can't see how much fuel is left in your tank, you can't see if there's a problem because maybe a light doesn't come on. That's compared to a control system in a building. So the fancier your dashboard, the more you're in touch with what's actually going on. Speak about energy costs and efficiency. If people think when fuel, gasoline a couple of years ago, and it wasn't that long, was bordering on $4 a gallon, people stopped buying Suburbans and Expeditions and they started buying Priuses, and then the Tesla came out. So if you think about efficiency in miles per gallon, you can compare HVAC systems efficiency in consuming electricity and fuel to a Prius or a Tesla versus some 1970s Chevrolet station wagon with a big gas guzzling engine inside of it. It does the same thing, getting you from point A to point B, but it's done differently and it's done more efficiently. And then you have that vehicle that you need to take care of. That's called the operation and maintenance life cycle cost. You know, you bought the vehicle, now you have to take care of it. It's been said, keep good pressure in your tires, make sure you change your oil, do tune-ups and make sure that your engine is running efficiently, because that's going to help you eliminate the operation and maintenance expense and increase the reliability and the life expectancy of that automobile. Same with HVAC. So while there's new technology similar to hybrids and Teslas in our industry, there's also the older stuff that doesn't necessarily make sense to replace it yet, because you can't necessarily get a return on the investment. So what you try to do is perhaps upgrade it and make it run as efficiently as possible, because it still does the job. So that's the efficiency side of the HVAC world, without getting super technical. Then we move into what COVID has presented in this past year, and that is the challenge of existing HVAC systems and essentially holding them accountable for the job that they were originally designed to perform. People are really concerned about and/or paying attention to the quality of the air that we are all breathing inside of a building. If you think about highly dense populated urban areas versus the woods, pollution in downtown Manhattan was typically noticeable on hot summer days. Maybe when you get home, you wipe your face with a cloth, and there's some grime or some dirt that comes off your face into that cloth. That's air pollution. Go to the Pound Ridge Reservation and go on a hike and go home and do the same thing. You're not getting that same level of dirt. So that's in the air that is around us outside. If you then think about what the building inside air is like, we really don't know. There are ways to test it, but pre-COVID, nobody really paid a high level of attention to the quality of the air in the building as long as people weren't getting sick on a regular basis. They weren't having some sort of a chronic respiratory situation that might have been associated with the quality of the air, or they're in a laboratory or a hospital or somewhere that air quality is tested on a regular basis because it's important, because you don't want to spread germs or whatever else may be lurking in that air. Well, then came COVID, and people are very concerned about the air inside of a building because it's been essentially proven at this point that COVID can spread from an infected person through what's called an aerosol. So an aerosol is essentially what comes out of our bodies as we're speaking, singing, yelling, sneezing, coughing, or emitting some stuff out of ourselves some other way. With the mask on, you're preventing some of the spread by filtering the exhaust from your mouth and nose. If you're not wearing a mask inside and you sneeze or cough and don't cover it, essentially it becomes a little spray of molecules or moisture that goes into the airstream. I don't have it on this slide, but if everybody on this call is interested in seeing the effect of an aerosol in an airstream inside of a building, I will give you a firm that's called Holt, H-O-L-T Architects. They're in upstate New York. And if you Google Holt Architects cough simulator, so cough simulator, you'll see about a 1.5 to a 2-minute video. They actually did 2 in a series where they do a simulation of a person in a bullpen environment in an office coughs, and the effect that the aerosol coming out of that person's cough has on the people that are sitting near that person coughing. And I'm happy once I'm done here, Bonnie, to put that in the chat room just for anybody that didn't understand. It's an amazing simulation that I think brought to surface a lot of the issues that we're having right now in this second wave. And the second wave was blamed essentially on indoor congregations. So people getting together in an informal setting for a holiday, maybe mask off, somebody's asymptomatic and infected, all of a sudden, a couple weeks later, a whole bunch of people have COVID. An unfortunate thing that we're dealing with, but it just points to the fact that indoor air quality is important. So for those of you that are somewhat back into your buildings, I hope that when you opened them back up after the pause, somebody ran the water for a little while, somebody turned on the electricity, and somebody did some sort of a check on their HVAC system to make sure that it was functional for the upcoming summertime. Then after that, it was good to do a maintenance to go through and clean stuff. When Governor Cuomo came out with the mandate that large occupied facilities should install MERV 13 rated air filters, I was listening to his press conference as I was driving, and I almost drove off the road because he's not an HVAC engineer. The problem with a MERV 13 filter, and again, I'll go into an analogy, we're all wearing masks. We heard about the disposable regular mask. We heard about the N95 mask that kept more stuff out. So take an N95 mask, make it a little bit dirty, and then put 5 of them over your face and try to breathe. Now take a disposable surgical mask that you get, at your local CVS, kind of like this, put it over your face and try to breathe. The single mask is a lot easier than 5 layers of N95 masks, perhaps with a little bit of dirt on the top of them. Well, that's the equivalent of what we call a commercial building air filter compared to a MERV 13. So when Governor Cuomo said a one size fits all, put in MERV 13s, what he was what he was suggesting was not really a good HVAC strategy, because not every system is designed to move air through a filter that traps as much stuff in the airstream as a MERV 13 filter. MERV 13 filters were basically designed for operating rooms or laboratories where there was fumes in the air and things like that. If you Google MERV, MERV, you can see a whole rating for different filters and what they actually remove from an airstream. So what we did was research, and we found some technology that can help clean air inside of a building. There's 2 basic strategies that we've come up with that will actually stabilize, kill, remove bacteria, allergens, particulate matter in an airstream. One of them is UV lights, and the other is something called needlepoint bipolar ionization. I know the second thing is a mouthful, so we'll just call it bipolar for now. But UV lights basically are fluorescent, high-powered, ultraviolet lights that shine kind of like the sun rays coming through a window on a surface area, and all the air that goes through that, whatever particulate, foreign matter, bacteria, organisms living or not, that pass through that lit area are killed on contact. There's been a lot of UV light systems that have gone into buildings when people are not there, because it's not safe for people to be exposed to the UV light, because it can cause some issues with eyesight or skin. But basically, take a school, for instance. If a district buys a portable UV light machine, when there's nobody in a classroom, they set up the machine, they turn it on, it runs on a timer, and basically kills everywhere that light can shine. The problem is it doesn't do anything for the areas that the light doesn't shine. So the second thing that we found with this bipolar ionization was it's a device that emits little electrical charges into an airstream. So we put them in wherever the HVAC unit has a fan, and then we use the fan and the ductwork, or if it's a wall-mounted ductless unit, we use the fan to basically blow the electrical charges into the space. And again, going back to an analogy, if everybody's familiar with the game Pac-Man, when we were a lot younger and growing up and playing video games, the electrical charges basically become little Mr. and Mrs. Pac-Mans, and they go into the air and they kind of do this, and they join together. And when they join together through the magic of electrical charges, positives and negatives always try to find each other, they trap stuff in their path. So they do essentially 2 things. They agglomerate, I believe that's the word. Mark, you're a really smart professional engineer. I think that is, I can't remember if it's conglomerate or agglomerate, but basically they snowball effect whatever particulate matter is in the air to the point where it gets heavy, and through gravity it drops, or it goes back into your filter and gets trapped. The second thing that ionization does is it has a chemical reaction with anything living, and it removes oxygen from that particulate or that bacteria, or that, it's been proven, virus, the SARS thing, and it basically kills it. By removing the oxygen from the molecule dies, or the bacteria dies. So through no byproducts, you can't smell anything, and it's really easy to install this stuff and connect it to the electrical system that's already in the HVAC fan system. And by the way, it does not consume much electricity to run. We're able to send a whole bunch of Pac-Man into a building and go into the nooks and crannies wherever air can move. And it does its job of essentially trying to eat whatever foreign material is in the air, and it cleans it. So bipolar ionization combined with standard commercial building filtration, which is the stuff we've been using for years and years and years, we found is doing an effective job of cleaning air inside of buildings. And by doing that, I just read an article this morning. When COVID came, there was an interesting opposite that occurred last year, and that was the standard influenza virus was down tremendously as far as reported cases. And medical, I guess, profession is attributing that to the fact that we're washing our hands, using hand sanitizer, and we're wearing masks on our face. That means that we have reduced the amount of bacteria and pollution in the air that we're breathing in or expelling out, as I used for my example earlier. So if we're sneezing or coughing with a mask on, we're kind of protecting people around us. And if we're breathing in while people around us are doing the same thing, we're kind of protecting ourselves. Well, not only is influenza down, the common cold is down. I think regular fevers and other things associated are down because we're not getting sick from people that we're sitting next to in an office. I haven't had a cold in a year, which is unusual. I have asthma, and I've been using the same inhaler for the last 6 months, which pre-COVID was unheard of. I went through about one of them per month. Pollution is down. So this whole air quality thing actually has some substance to it, and allergies are down. So with that being said, and not getting too technical, I just want to let you folks know that there are strategies that you can look into to help your existing systems do a better job of cleaning air inside of your buildings. But I also want to emphasize, even if you don't want to invest in something like that, the best thing that you can do, just like with a car, is be good to your HVAC system and make sure that you take good care of it, because the cleaner it is, the better it's going to run, the longer it's going to last, and the better it's going to serve you and the folks that are occupying your building. The only other thing I will leave you with right now is a perspective from my industry. I've been doing this for over 30 years. Finally, people are paying attention to the air that they're breathing, which is making our industry perform at a higher level of accountability. You can't just have somebody come into your building and disappear on the roof for a little while and think that they're doing their job, because they don't always do a good job. So don't ever be afraid to ask whoever's working on your HVAC equipment to show you what they've done. It's very effective if they show you what they start with and then show you what they finish with, so you can see an appreciable difference or engage in a conversation so you can kind of understand what they're doing and how they're helping maintain your equipment and kind of tune it up, again, like a car. So with that being said, I will turn this over to Bonnie, and thank you.
Thank you, Bud. That was chock full of information, and I'm sure there are going to be plenty of questions for you after this. Would you please put your email address in the chat so if we don't finish all the questions today, people can contact you after this. Okay, so I am going to talk, let's see, why my screen not advancing? Here we go. I'm going to talk about LED lighting today. There are so many different types of lights. I have 3 of them on the screen here, but there are literally thousands, tens of thousands of different types of lights. There are different shapes, sizes, color temperatures, wattages, mountings, so many things. And there are so many different ways we use lights in different spaces. So think of the different types of lights we might need for, you know, a sanctuary versus a supermarket versus an operating room versus a museum versus a nursing home. I mean, I could speak hours about the different types of lights needed in each of those places. But I'm just gonna keep it simple here. I'm just gonna talk, you know, I'm just gonna use these 3 as an example throughout talking about LED technology. And you know, you look at this and you say, you know, we all have these in our homes, one version or another, or maybe a mixture of them. And you say to yourself, a light bulb doesn't seem like it could do much to avert the energy or the economic crisis. But when you think of this traditional 40-watt lamp, that incandescent bulb on the left, and you think that if you just swap it out for like a 7-watt LED on the right, and some people have that interim swap out, they go to CFLs and then to LEDs. You see that 40-watt lamp goes to 7 watts, and you have the same amount or better lighting. So the lumens is the amount of light that's emitted from the bulb, and you'll see for this incandescent, this 550 lumens, and for the LED it's 700 lumens. So it's actually more light than the incandescent, and it's, and it's less wattage. So you look at one light bulb, but then you think about a facility and you think of how many light bulbs there exist in a facility, and changing the lights really can make a significant impact, both environmentally and fiscally. So that's one of the reasons why upgrading to LED lighting is like one of the first recommendations that come out of an energy audit. And Mark spoke about that before. He had a number of pages where he said, lighting and HVAC, those really are the two things that use the most energy in a building. And lighting's always number one for, that comes out of number one recommendation that comes out of an energy audit. And there are a few reasons for that. One is the savings are immediate. You don't have to wait for a heating or cooling season to see the results of a lighting upgrade, because you use your lights every day. The next time you get your bill from Con Ed, you'll see the reduction. You don't have to wait for the summer or for the winter. Another reason why it's recommended first after an energy audit is because switching your lights does not necessarily mean major construction. It's not like, you've probably seen in the city, like these huge cranes lifting these 20-ton HVAC units to the roofs of skyscrapers. The police are there closing up streets. You don't have to do any of that for lights. It's minimal construction. Yeah, now and then we have to rewire some things in the ceiling or the walls, or maybe you have to move the location of a fixture from here to there. But you really don't have to worry about, interrupting the inhabitants of the space or noise mitigation or anything like that. Another reason why upgrading to LED lighting is most recommended from energy audits is because the lifetimes of LED lights are many times that of other legacy technologies like fluorescents. You might change fluorescent bulbs once a year, once every 2 years. LEDs will go 5-10 years. So you're reducing your operations and maintenance costs. And finally, just about every utility in the country offers some sort of financial rebates for lighting projects. Between the savings, the reduced maintenance costs, the rebates, we're seeing very, very quick payback periods. The rebates can range greatly. In the months right after the lockdown was over, so many buildings in Con Ed territory got their lighting upgrades for free or for close to free. And it's pretty incredible. And when you think about why would Con Ed pay you to not use what they're selling, it's a very interesting question. I mean, they're selling electric and paying you not to use electric. And that's because it will cost them even more to upgrade the infrastructure that they have, which, in many areas of their territory is over 100 years old. So, so there's really no reason not to move forward with lighting. If you're going to, if there's only one thing you're going to do, it would make sense to upgrade your LEDs, upgrade to LEDs. I also want to mention that in the last decade, researchers have paid increased attention to the effect of lighting on health. Study shows that the improvement in the work environment is closely tied with improvement in the performance of safety of workers, because light has a direct correlation with the ease of reading, lowering eye strain, reducing errors, better turnaround time, higher test scores, so on and so forth. It's not a coincidence that when you go into a restaurant and there's soft amber lighting, that has been shown to ease digestion. People are looking at spaces in that way to help people feel more comfortable in their own bodies. You probably heard about light boxes where people buy these lights to simulate the sun, as it rises and sets, to help them set their circadian rhythms. So, so in addition to energy efficiency, lighting has been shown, if used correctly, to improve health. And I'm going to share with you a couple of case studies from my synagogue, which is Kol Ami in White Plains. We did 2 projects with them. The first in 2017 consisted of lighting and HVAC, and my company did the lighting and Bud's company did the HVAC, and then more recently we did lighting in the exterior. So so back in 2017, it was about this time. It was like right before Tu B'Shvat, and those of you on the call know that Tu B'Shvat is the holiday known as the New Year's of trees, and it's generally celebrated as an ecological awareness day. And this is a picture of all of us celebrating the completion of this energy efficiency project at Kol Ami. And, I'm there on the left, second from left. Bud is kind of in the back. You see the top of his head over there. And we were presenting that giant check to Kol Ami. It was a combination of a rebate from Con Edison and from NYSERDA. The project to upgrade all the lights in their 3 buildings, all interior lights in their 3 buildings, plus a dozen rooftop and ground mounted units for the 3 buildings, HVAC units, was about $400,000, and they got about $100,000 back in rebates. And every year since then, they saved $81,000 on their energy bills, which is pretty incredible to save $81,000 a year. About a year after we did the upgrade, I got a call from the executive director who said, "Hey, Bonnie, our energy savings, we're not saving as much. What's going up? We're using more energy. Why are we paying more on our Con Ed bill?" And we took this very seriously. We did an analysis, and we figured out that because the spaces were so energy efficient and comfortable to be in, it wasn't like there were hot spots or cold spots or it was too light or too dark. They were just very comfortable. The space rentals had gone up. So when the space rentals for weddings or bar mitzvahs or whatever it is, whenever the space rental goes up, then the usage goes up. So we determined that actually they were saving more. The usage was going up because the space was open more, but the costs was still continuing to go down. So that $81,000 is the equivalent of saving 143 acres of trees, of forests annually, and 390 tree seedlings annually. So back in 2017, there weren't really great rebates for the exterior lights at that time. But in the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, there were. And if any of you have been in Kol Ami's parking lot, and I'm sure many of you have, you've noticed that I see some nods, we noticed that we need to fix the pavement and relocate the lights. If you were there in the evening, you would notice that there were many dark spots that could be both safety and security issues. And prior to the pandemic in 2019, we started planning the phase of like a campus-wide renovation project that would address the terrible condition of the parking lot and relocating the lights. This rebate was so great that we decided we thought this plan was going to take like 3 to 5 years, but we said, you know what, we could, if with the rebates, if the project was a $30,000 project to upgrade the exterior lights, and Con Ed was going to pay 21,000 of it, meaning Kol Ami would pay only 9,000, but in the first year they'd save 10,000 from upgraded. It was a real no-brainer. So we went ahead and we decided to upgrade those lights, and we just made sure that when we do our campus-wide renovation, that we will those lights they'll last 10, 20 years. We could move them. So Mark has given you a case study on Westchester Jewish Center, and here are 2 on Kol Ami. We've all done work on other synagogues in Westchester, Shari Tikva and Scarsdale and Temple Israel and White Plains. And if you want to know more about those, feel free to reach out. And I'm noticing that the time is kind of escaping from us, so I'm going to try to go a little bit faster. But then again, I just want everybody to know, if we don't get through everything, we're going to have another energy meeting in May about this. So there are so many things that you could do in your spaces for to conserve energy. And Bud and I are speaking basically about HVAC and lighting, but here's a list of so many more of them. And last year, Governor Cuomo signed signed legislation into law, the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. It's also known as the Climate Act. And so now these things are mandatory in all of New York State. And of course, Westchester is part of New York State. And so the roadmap that we've shown you today can help you come into compliance with the law, but there's a lot to do. And so, you know, it's not just, you know, a nature implication or a climate implication or an economic implication. There's also, you know, a legal implication here too. We're all going to be required to do it. And luckily there are all these types of programs you know, available to do it. These are different funding programs. There's a ton of money available. Bud and myself and Mark, we all work at various stages in these programs, and we can tell you the economics of them and the requirements. And if you want to use other contractors, you just make sure that they're familiar with these programs and that they don't just hand you paperwork to fill out. You want the contractors to be very familiar with all these programs and to be approved market partners in these programs so that they can actually secure the money for you. Because in most of these programs, you can't just have any contractor. They have to be approved market partners. And I apologize for going so fast through this. I know that there's a lot of information here. I could talk for hours again about financing. If the rebates don't cover 100%, there's a lot of financing available out there. A lot of places are willing to do some creative financing for energy efficiency projects. So, you know what, we have like 2 minutes left. There are plenty of other benefits to energy efficiency. We've spoken about them all along, but I have some more listed here. I really want to get to the chat. So, you know what, I'm just going to stop sharing for now so I could see your questions. Let's see. Okay, let's see. The official will not work with LED. Beverly Picker. Told that our fixtures will not work with LED bulbs. That you know, think about it this way. You know, you have legacy technology in the fixtures and you're trying to put in brand new technology in it. And it is possible that fixtures will not work with LED bulbs. What's usually required is one of two things. Either you gut the fixtures and you rewire them to use LED bulbs, or you replace the whole fixtures. And if your fixtures are old, you know, native to the building, you probably do want to replace them or rewire them. Okay, Judy asks, does the 21 plus cents per kWh for SC1 in Westchester include delivery cost or only electricity supply cost? Mark, do you want to handle that?
Yeah, sure. The answer is it does include both. That's delivery and supply. Again, delivery and average electric supply cost.
Okay, thank you. And we're exactly at 10 o'clock now. I think we'll just go a couple more minutes. If that's okay with you, if you need to drop off, please do. Karen, I just want to say one last thing though. If you do need to drop off, the next meeting is, let me get that date in a second. Oh, it's February 9th at a new time at 6 p.m. with Marilee Goldsmith of the Jewish Earth Alliance about climate advocacy and education. Okay, hopefully you can all stay on to hear the answers to the next few questions. Karen Sabath asks, Mark, this is for you. Is the WJC electricity choice a clean energy one?
And the answer is no, it was not. And just a little background, when you make your choice on your electricity supplier, you could choose a source that is 100% renewable or 0% or something in between. And in this case, it was just the lowest rate in terms of what the market has to offer.
Thank you. And then Mark just wanted to remind everybody that Tu B'Shvat this year is Wednesday evening, January 27th. Thank you, Mark. And let's see. Ellen Weininger says, Sustainable Energy Expo, statewide virtual energy expo with New York State Energy and Development Authority, presented by Grassroots Environmental Education, is April 7th to 8th. And please visit, and she puts the link in the chat, and how to talk to your kids about climate change. Okay. And Ellen's giving us some more information, turning angst into action. Thursday, January 28th, 8:15 p.m. to 9:15. Everybody's invited. That looks like the end of our comments and questions. You have our contact information. If you can think of any more questions, feel free to contact us after this. Oh, Ellen's putting a link in the chat. And I know it feels kind of rushed at the end. I apologize for that. But we're available. Feel free to contact us. And thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Bonnie, and thank you, Pam.
Thank you.